It's officially been over a week since Marvel Rivals launched, and so far the game has received some pretty positive feedback. This game is a super addicting hero shooter with some traits that most of us are familiar with and even some new ones we've never seen before. Plus, everyone feels insanely cracked while playing. The good duelists are a problem to your backline. The enemy healer lowkey has the same damage output as your sharpshooters, and your tanks? Well, your tanks kinda suck. Why is it that the Vanguards feel a little off than the other roles? Back in my good old Overwatch days, I primarily main tanks for the main reason of feeling like an unstoppable force. But with Marvel Rivals, it just doesn't hit the same. Is it even worth locking tanks when it doesn't feel rewarding? Vanguards and Marvel Rivals have the unique and essential role of taking space on the map and protecting the team by becoming the direct focus of enemies, thus tanking all the damage for your allies. As you'd imagine, the Vanguard role is needed in any team comp since without tanks, it would be difficult to take control of fights for different points on the map. But does it feel much different whether there's a tank or not? There's been multiple games I've played where my team literally shreds the enemy Hulk to bits and vice versa, and that could have been a result of bad gameplay, sure. But tanks not surviving rounds in matches has become very noticeable over time. The suppression that solo Vanguards use on enemies doesn't seem to be as effective, at least to the point of having the enemy team lay off. And this is probably because tanks aren't intimidating enough. Because why am I less terrified of seeing Captain America than Jeff the freaking Landshark? Tanks should feel threatening and difficult to combat against when you're a duelist, and especially threatening to a healer. Let's take for instance tanks from Overwatch as an example. Running into a Reinhardt or even a Junker Queen gives the enemy a run for their money simply because of how strong their damage output is and their ability to take space. And just as a disclaimer, I may reference Overwatch now and then, as I've talked about comparison in another video and how in reality it's a good gauge for understanding what's new to us through familiarity. It's just how humans work. We do not knock on the game because of similarities, so let's have an open discussion. Or, well, not open, I'm the only one talking, so I mean you're probably talking right now, but I can't hear you. Wait, did you just tell me to shut up? Something I've noticed that's in this game is incentivizing character selections through season events where you complete the missions to unlock gallery cards and stories. And those is an interesting way to make characters lock in other heroes. I hate to say it, but
nah, that's not enough.
I think for the player base to actively choose a character, they have to want to play that character based on the advantage they give them while playing the game, which rolls into the idea of meta strategies that people eventually learn and see and want to try them out. But we don't see much of that with Vanguards. The closest characters that feel like they give off the best tank experience to me are probably Thor and Magneto. Doctor Strange is probably great too, but I don't play him as much because his portals literally eat my FPS for breakfast. You see, some tanks are good enough, but the problem is, they aren't fun to play because of their weak damage output. Even if you're having massive impact, it doesn't feel significant. And that leads us into...
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
Now the game is fairly new, so when it comes down to balance, I'm sure things will roll out over time. But it is obvious how insanely cracked these heroes are. It's actually ridiculous. I despise Squirrel Girl in particular, but we don't talk about her here. I've heard a lot on nerfing this hero or buffing this one, and it's all warranted. But I have to admit that NetEase games make superheroes feel like superheroes. The characters in the game should feel strong, but I don't think it would be a good approach for the devs and Marvel Rivals to make a habit of dropping intense nerfs on heroes. It kinda kills their whole identity. However, focusing on buffs would be much more beneficial to the ones that don't receive much attention, and that's primarily related to the entire role of Vanguard. This way, tank mains don't feel as excluded from duelists and even feel rewarded, because their role now feels useful in suppressing what was once hard to compete against. I also think a big reason for players not picking Vanguard or even strategists were the overwhelming amount of duelists that dropped since release. I remember watching each hero trailer as they rolled out and I was like, damn, where the tanks at? I feel like if the devs released an equal amount of characters per role, it would have been a good balance in making each role seem fun to play. Something like what Valorant does with their new agents where they rotate the role every release. And this wouldn't necessarily stop insta-lock duelists, but it would at least show some sense of unbias from the devs regarding roles. Specifically with roles, players have been calling for role queue because of the difficult times they have with teammates not picking appropriate roles for their comp. Initially, I agreed with this idea, but I started thinking that maybe we don't actually need that. Marvel Rival devs already confirmed that they did not consider adding role queue into their game, and that may be because they don't want to be completely identical to their competitors at Blizzard. But also role queue gives longer queue times, which the devs probably want to avoid. Not to mention that open queue actually heightens the skill cap of players, basically forcing them to lock characters that work with their comp, making them compete to win the game instead of one-tricking a role or hero. These issues will of course spark opinions and what others think it takes to make the game good. But with balance comes...
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
I think that Marvel Rivals is pretty good so far. It does a great job at keeping me on the game, and I'm sure it's gonna get better eventually. These devs seem really passionate about their project, and not like a money grab type of passion. Ultimately, for people to start taking tanks seriously, they need to change how it makes us feel so that it can actually attract more people to that specific role, just as it does with other duelists. Like Squirrel Girl. Did I ever mention her? I don't know why people actually even play that stupid. She's actually butt. She's just a glorified Junkrat is what I say. I don't even care what people think. Did you know I made an entire segment about how many times she freaking killed me? She is stupid. She is a dumb, just a stupid. She's literally throwing acorns from nowhere, from deep, from 3. Oh my gosh, from 60 yards deep. She needs to get deleted from the game. I don't think you understand how bad she is. She is a menace. I don't even like her, bro. I mean, what an absolute nuisance. She needs to get deleted.